Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to today's virtual design review panel meeting. On our agenda, we now have 392 Main Street West in Hamilton. My name is Edward Winter. I'm hosting this meeting, and David Cluzio will be chairing this meeting. In addition to our panel members, we have the applicant team, city staff, members of the public, and media observing this meeting today. Members of the public are welcomed here to observe the meeting only, with no questions or comments at this time. This meeting will be recorded and uploaded to the City of Hamilton's Design Review Panel webpage. Lastly, a reminder to our panelists, please keep your microphones muted while not speaking. Thank you everyone for attending our Design Review Panel. David, begin your meeting when ready.
Thank you, Edward. Good afternoon and welcome, everyone. Edward, can you please confirm that this session is being recorded?
Yes, we confirm we are recording.
Okay, are there any changes in the agenda?
Similar to last time, I will be presenting.
Okay, and I assume by silence that there is no conflict of interest with this proposal on behalf of any of the panel members. So on the agenda today is the review of 392 Main Street West. The lead planner on the file is Devin Morton, but once again, Edward Winter will be making the presentation. Good afternoon, Edward. We're ready for your presentation. Please keep the presentation under 10 minutes.
All right, I'll keep it brief. Okay, yes, 392 Main Street West. The subject lands shown here outlined in red. And the proposal is to construct a 9-story mixed-use building with 171 residential dwelling units with 446 square meters of commercial at ground floor and a total of 105 parking spaces located on 3 levels of underground parking. Here's a photograph of the site from the southwest, noting the corner of Margaret and Main. It's a surface parking lot and the 2 orange brick buildings on the center left. Okay, and viewing from the southwest, looking along Main Street. This subject site is along a primary corridor, as noted in the Urban Hamilton official plan, and is also shown as mixed-use medium density. It is also part of the Strathcona secondary plan and noted as mixed-use medium density in that secondary plan as well. Showing the site plan with the retail in pink and circulation in gray with an indoor amenity space shown in purple. Just going to my notes. The applicant is showing angular planes along the north side, but we're also looking for application of angular plane from 80% of the Main Street West right-of-way as part of the citywide corridor planning design guide principles. Moving on to our questions. Whoops. Does the proposal complement the surrounding with its building design and placement on site and the provision of pedestrian amenities? Does the proposal adequately transition the building mass and height towards the residential properties to the west? Does the proposal fit within the context of the adjacent residential properties and the context of the street wall and massing along Main Street West and set an appropriate standard for future development? Would revisions required by angular planes measured from 80% of the street right-of-way improve the massing? That I will stop sharing and we're ready for the applicant.
Yes, so thank you, Edward. If we can ask the consultant to provide additional information, and please keep the presentation to under 10 minutes.
Yes, let me just share my screen here. Can everyone see my screen?
I think so.
Great. Okay, thank you, David, and thanks, Edward, for your presentation. My name is Ashley Patton. I'm a registered professional planner with Southfields, and we are the planning consultants for the owners of this property at 392 Main Street West. So I will briefly go over the first few slides before passing it on to Aphrodite, the project architect from A&D Architects. So to put this site into context, the property is located at the northwest corner of Main Street West and Margaret Street in the Strathcona neighborhood of the city, and approximately 500 meters to the west of downtown Hamilton. The LRT is proposed to run along King Street, which is shown on this slide in blue, which is approximately 200 meters north of the site. And you can also see that the site is within 800 meters of two of those planned LRT stations, including the Dundurn station at Dundurn and King, and the Queen and King station, kind of at the border of downtown. So immediately to the north of the site and to the west are low-rise residential uses, with two approved mid-rise buildings on the south side of Main Street, and shown in this teal colored here, with one of them currently under construction. There's also a proposed 10-story mid-rise building approximately 70 meters to the west, shown in orange, located at 428 Main Street West. This area is well served by public transit and is within convenient walking distance to a variety of community amenities, services, places to shop, restaurants, places of employment, and grocery stores, including the West Hamilton Innovation District, which is this red area in the transparent to the bottom left of your screen, as well as downtown Hamilton in the transparent orange. There's a number of schools and parks, as well as the large Fortino's commercial plaza located at the northwest corner of Dundurn and Main Street. So as Edward mentioned, Main Street is identified as a primary corridor and designated mixed-use medium density in the Urban Hamilton official plan. The site is also designated mixed-use medium density within the Strathcona secondary plan, which permits mixed-use developments between 2 and 6 stories, with additional height permissions up to 10 stories, subject to meeting a few criteria, including providing for progressive stepping from low-rise housing forms, providing for step-backs along street frontages to minimize the height appearance from the public realm, as well as mitigating potential impacts on adjacent lands. The site is also subject to area-specific policy B within the secondary plan, which permits some non-residential uses such as offices and live-work units, in addition to local commercial uses permitted on the ground floor, such as retail and restaurants, provided there are residential uses above. And I don't have a slide for the zoning, but the site, along with the abutting properties to the west, including 59, 61, 63, 65, and 67 Strathcona Avenue, are all zoned C5 mixed-use medium density, exception 298. The city, as part of their comprehensive zoning project, rezoned this corridor along with other mixed-use commercial corridors in 2017, which permits mixed-use buildings up to a maximum of 22 meters. And I won't go through the site visit photos as Edward already has, but I will focus on this photo here on the left, which shows the laneway that abuts the site to the north. So the city of Hamilton, or in the city of Hamilton, there are both public laneways and private laneways. This is a public laneway, but it is an unassumed alleyway, meaning the city does not maintain this alleyway, and it has been the city's practice, and I understand from staff that this is currently being looked at, but that in order for the owner to rely on this laneway for vehicle or pedestrian access to the site, the owner is required to purchase the right-of-way from the city, and as part of that process, the owner would be required to ensure that any other properties would have access easements over this laneway, or that rely on this laneway would continue to have access through the site. So the proposed development does assume that this alleyway would be closed and purchased by the owner from the city. So that concludes my part of the presentation, and I will pass it on to Aphrodite.
Hello everyone, this is Aphrodite, Project Architects with AN Architects. So this building, as you know, is located at the corner of Main Street and Margaret Street. So basically in the design, we had to deal with designing two main facade, one on Margaret, one on Main Street, and we didn't want to focus on just one. And then what we ended up designing is kind of integrating the two facade on both sides into one. So by introducing some horizontal bands and some vertical bands that we have proposed here, as you can see in this image, we try to use the similar language and similar materiality all around this two facade, and also we take it also back to the rear side of the building. If you go to the next image, you can see that also this is the site from the Margaret Street. So we take all of this white concrete materials that they're going to be architecturally well done all around the building, and then we have proposed some glasses along with the spandrel metal panel, spandrel glasses or metal panels that are going to be gray color on this facade. And then if you go to the next image, it's going to be the main entrance that we have some sort of like a architecture feature, and that is coming out where we have the lobbies to emphasize on the main entrance of the lobby here. So if you go to the next image, I think it's going to be our site plan. So basically we have proposed the lobby and the retails of Main Street. And by doing this, actually, we are kind of activate and then enhance the streetscape along the Main Street. As soon as you enter the lobby, you will see the indoor amenity that there might be some glasses between the amenity and lobby area, so that it make it more livelihood. And then on the backs, there are some outdoor space, which has shown in green color. For the parking entrance and loading, we didn't want to have it off the Main Street because it's a very busy street. We try to design it in a way that we are having them from the back. So the parking garage is off the Margaret Street, and we push it back by about 6 meters to give some pause for the cars that coming in and out for the pedestrian safety, and also by make it a little bit more invisible garage door basically of the main facade in the street. And then the loading area is off the laneway from the rear side. So, and basically we kind of made it also invisible, so it doesn't, it's not kind of in the main facade of the building. So this building consists of 171 units, about 50% studio, 1 bedroom plus 10, 1 BD 23%, and then 24% 2 bedroom. The studio that we have proposed, they can easily be converted into 1 bedroom plus 10 or 2 bedroom units if the market demands for it. And we have provided about 1,297 square meter of the amenity, indoor outdoor amenity, which is about 7.5 square meter per unit. And if you just go through all the plans, we can quickly see this is the parking levels we have, and then the level 3, and then as you go up, as you can see on the north side, we are setting the building from level 4 to follow the angular plane on that side from the laneway from where we have the neighborhood. And the next image, I think as you can see, it goes up, and then so next one, and then the mechanical, and this is a few elevations: south elevation, north elevation, and then west, as you can see on this elevation, that how we have the setbacks for the angular planes. And the next one, east elevation. Next, these are few perspective 3D views looking northwest and then southwest, and more views for the setbacks along the laneway or where we're facing the neighborhood. So we have proposed some windows on this side, but those are not a functional. These are more of to give some livelihood to the elevation. They are going to be mostly spandrel because we believe that at the site beside our property also one day will be developed. So we don't want to propose any clear window on that side. So it's just a frosted, for time being, actually, for just a frosted window.
Okay, I think your time is pretty much up.
Okay.
If you can wrap up quickly.
Sure. So if you can just go to the next one. These are just showing some diagrams of the angular plane, as you can see. Next one. Yeah. So next one, please. Next one. These are all the angular planes that we have to, and then the shadow study that we have done. So the red one is the as of right, the orange is the proposed, and then if you go next one, please. Yeah, next one. Yeah, I think that's it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for your presentation. I'm going to turn over to the panel members to ask any clarification questions. And Jennifer Sison, be the first.
Thanks, David. Thanks, Edward, Ashley, and Aphrodite for your presentations. I've got a couple of questions. I think, Aphrodite, you may have touched on this just really quickly in your presentation. You noted the properties on Strathcona are anticipated to be developed in the future, but I was kind of curious what the intent in the interim condition is with asking for that 0-meter setback, and if you could speak to why you're not choosing to apply that angular plane there. Sorry, Aphrodite, I think you're on mute.
I was saying, sorry, I was asking if Ashley wants to talk about this or if you want me to. Yeah, sure.
I can speak to kind of the setback condition. So in terms of the impacts that we assessed, obviously we assessed the as of right shadow versus which is the providing a full 7.5 meters, and we found that the shadow impact specifically on that side was only about an hour additional shade in those rear yards. So the impact in terms of shade in that interim condition, assuming that those buildings remain as is in terms of built form impacts, and like Aphrodite mentioned, in terms of overlook and privacy, like there are no primary windows proposed on those sides. So we think that it's an acceptable condition from an overlook and shadow and built form impacts in the interim condition of those existing buildings.
Thanks, Ashley. I had another question on wind studies. Were wind studies completed? If they were, I may have missed them in the package.
No, the wind study was not prepared, and it has not been identified by staff as a requirement as part of the site plan approval process.
Thank you. That's all my questions.
Thank you.
Okay.
The facade, the treatment of the architectural three sides is what seems to be predominantly glazing, and with small portions of spandrel panel with concrete slabs that are projecting from the envelope as thermal breaks. And I wanted you to maybe speak to us a bit about how you feel this building is performing responsibly from a sustainable perspective in terms of energy conservation, given the design approach.
At this stage, actually, like when we further develop the building, I think we will add more. We will need actually more spandrel windows to be shown on the spandrel, or maybe metal panels to have to back up with insulation on the back. So this rendering is more of like a I can say artistic view, but like for sure, like we will make sure that the building will be efficient, and we will have for sure more insulation. It's not going to be all of this glass that as shown. We will have like we will need them, because like where we have a wall hitting the window, we will have a spandrel on those locations, or we will have metal panel with the back insulation on those areas, which will be shown and taken care of during the permit or like construction phase for sure.
Okay, thank you. And the second question, I noticed on the second floor, a number of the dwelling units on the back seem to be excessively long. There's one that's 17 meters by 3 meters. I don't know if I've ever seen a residential unit like that. Can you talk a bit about that? Does that meet code? Are there concerns about what the experience of that might be for the tenant?
Yeah, so those units, yes, to confirm that they meet the code, yes, they meet the areas that's required for the living room, for the kitchen, dining area, or bedrooms, if there is a bedroom there. They will meet their building code, that's no problem. And then for this type of unit is more of like I can say more of like a bachelor or student that they can use them. And then they have like the sleeping area is in the middle of the unit, but the bedroom, the dining and living area and the kitchen area that is going to be used most of the time, they are like it's like a kind of like a 3 meter by, I don't know, like maybe 10 meter or 12 meter. So we found that it's working. We don't see that's a problem with
Yeah,
this.
maybe I could add a bit of context to that. So project developer on this one is Lamb Developments, and they've used this unit in other areas in Toronto and other places, and they find that these long narrow units, for some reason, because we had the exact same question you did, they sell really well, and they're laid out in an interesting way. So yeah, we had the exact same question, and it's our understanding that they sell really well in the marketplace.
And to add to that, if like for any reason they cannot sell it, then it's very easy to combine them. We always can leave like some knock-on panel in them, so they can easily convert it to 2-bedroom units plus 10 or like a larger units.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Great. And the last one is just a clarification. As I understand it, the project is not following the 7.5 meter setback to the west. Through the studies of the angular plane, it's projecting through that on each of the three that have been demonstrated, and it's also higher in terms of height than what's allowable. Is that correct?
Yeah, so just to clarify about the 7.5 meters, the 7.5 meters required by the zoning bylaw is required when abutting a residential zone or a residential use. We don't think it was the intent because the lands to the west are zoned also C5. We don't think it was the intent to provide 7.5 meters between each mid-rise building, but that it's intended to provide that separation to the low-rise residential areas. So yes, we're not meeting the 7.5 meters to the west or to the north, but we are providing taking into account the laneway, which will be assumed into the site area following, as I mentioned, the owner closing that would be closer to that 7.5 meters.
Right. But also there's no stepping back or angular plane on the west side that you feel is needed here.
Yeah, maybe. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Ashley.
No, I was just going to say there is no stepping back right now. That is one comment that we did receive from staff. So we are taking that back into consideration along the western side, whether that's above the street wall height of 6 or if there's another appropriate place to add that. But we are taking that into consideration.
Okay, thank you. That's my questions.
Maybe I'll just add a couple of comments to that, Ted. I think it's an important question, and I think staff appropriately raised it as part of their review of the application. And I think when we look at these mid-rise corridors that you're seeing, not only in Hamilton but across the region, sometimes you're left with these smaller parcels at the edges, and this is a very narrow block. From Margaret to Strathcona, you're just over 75 meters. So there's really no right spot to put a break into it. And I know you have to recognize what's existing today. So you're kind of in between a rock and a hard place between planning for the future and trying to appreciate and protect what's there today. So in this regard, in planning for the future, it's most appropriate to give a 0 meter setback along that edge so that anything that's built on the remainder of that block could fit and could be pulled tight and could actually be a development parcel. But we are definitely hearing everyone's comments, including staff's, about is there an in-between where you can resolve this relationship. So we just wanted to kind of describe that context for you.
Thank you.
Dana?
Yes, I just have a question. with respects to the proposed bicycle parking for residents of the building, but also whether you have bicycle parking for retail users.
Yeah, so I can answer that, and maybe Aphrodite can join in. So there is visitor retail parking at the rear of the site. Here, let me, I will share my screen again here. So it's accessible through the driveway here. You'll see in this gray area to the left of the orange staircase. So that is the retail and visitor bike parking. And then the residential bike parking, I believe, is within the underground levels.
P1. They're at P1.
P1.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you know the number? Is it like one per unit or?
I think it's 128 total.
Okay.
And then they have access from the back. Basically, we have proposed a rear door from the laneway for pet wash, for accessing to from the taking the bike not from the lobby but from the back to the elevator and taking them down.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
That's all for me.
Jennifer Mallon?
Thanks, David. I had one question about the setbacks, although we've talked about that a lot on the west side. I guess I'll toss a similar question back to the city. In the intensification of Main Street, have you seen other development applications that have relaxed that 7.5 meter setback requirement? I don't know if you're allowed to compare precedents in this form, but
See Reno on the call. Oh, there he is. Did you want to try that one, Reno?
Yes, Reno Dalbello Development Planning. I cannot recall if there has been an application where we reduced it from 7.5 to 0.9 because that's the request. So to answer your question, I don't recall anything being that. That's much to be reduction, so I cannot recall.
okay, thank you. No other questions.
Maybe I'll add a bit of context to that. We've worked on a number of projects across the city. Some of the mid-rise buildings have reduced that and basically on a site-specific basis. One was at 600 James Street North, which is the northeast corner of James and Burlington Street that this panel commented on, and that was reduced down to I believe it was 1.8 meters. But yeah, anyways, just wanted to highlight that for you that it's been modified in several instances on a site-specific basis based on a number of different factors. So.
Right. Okay.
Just provide a little more context then in terms of the zoning and the formal consultation. There is an interpretation of what the front of the lot is, and there was a discussion about the variances and supporting changes there in line with what David has been speaking about. So that is, staff is considering that.
Thank you. No further questions from me.
Ellen?
No further questions.
I have to admit, I have a question about this angular plane calculation. In the diagrams, they are on the north side. They're showing starting, I think, 11 meters in the air and then proceeding, sloping south. Is that the? I have to admit, I'm not sure if that is the correct way of calculating it, or I thought you started at the property line and went up.
Yeah, I can provide. Yeah, I can provide some context. So there's kind of two elements. The citywide corridor guidelines take it from, or recommend you take it from the ground level. But there has been further refinements through the 05200 zoning, comprehensive zoning project that does apply it from the as of right height of the abutting property. So in this case, the as of right height for the properties to the north is 11 meters. And so there's kind of provided clarification and direction as to the application of an angular plane provided in 05200. And the corridor guidelines are from 2012, I believe. And so the 05200 does kind of provide a direction in terms of the city's vision of a mid-rise corridor and conforming to more recent policies.
So is somebody from the city able to agree that they've been correctly applying the site plan on that instance? And that same individual hopefully will be able to explain to me this question about the 80%. Does that mean that they haven't applied it on the street side? I'm just trying to get to the bottom of that question that you're asking us about. I'm hoping Ken or Reno
Yeah,
can help me out here.
What specific, can you re-ask the question again? Sorry, I'm just trying to.
Well, we're being asked to comment on if on the road side, as opposed to the residential side, whether an 80% angular plane should, well, I guess I'm asking for clarification. Is there an 80% right-of-way plane supposed to be applied on the Main Street side, in addition to the, the one from the other side? There's a kind of a question that was asked. It's I don't have it in front of me, I think from the planning department, for us to comment on that and whether this would be an improvement. And I'm just trying to understand where it's coming from and if it's, yeah.
I'll
Also,
try and
just to
take that.
confirm that the interpretation that we were just given by the planner, that the city agrees with this, sorry, I want to say your name, that Ashley is, that what she said is good. Yeah, not that I'm besmirching her professional qualifications, but I do feel it. I was really asking the city the question as opposed to the proponent in the first instance. So.
I'll try and start. Rito can correct me. The 80% of street right-of-way is something from the 2012 corridor design guidelines. It is a guideline. I don't think it's part of the zoning interpretation. So it's generally meant to try and guide the massing of the building, the line of a podium or marker on the building. That's the way it generally tends to be interpreted. In terms of Ashley's interpretation of the angular plane, my recollection is it is from grade, but I have not reviewed the bylaw currently. I don't know, Reno, if you can speak to that one.
The question that we have posed to the applicant is that the property is subject to the city's corridor design guidelines, and the proposed massing should comply with a 45-degree angular plane located at 80% of the right-of-way on both adjacent streets, and that's at grade.
So you're saying it should be, or you're asking if it should be?
Well, I think the question is that if those revisions would improve the massing, in your opinion. That was the question. So if the correct angular plane is applied, would it improve the massing? I hope
and the second question is that it sounds like Ken is contradicting Ashley a bit. So I'm trying to, that one I'm kind of back at that one now a little bit.
That's the rear, that's the rear laneway one.
Yeah.
So
yeah, maybe I can clarify. Maybe I can clarify that a bit. Ken's 100% right, and the reason why he's right is because I think he wrote the corridor design guideline. So it is taken in the corridor design guidelines. It's taken from the property line at grade. But I think what Ashley was saying is as that thinking in those angular planes has evolved, we're starting to see that shift, and we know that in other municipalities like the city of Toronto, they have a shallow lot angular plane, and in many cases across Hamilton, they've applied that setback where it's taken from the height of the adjacent zone, which in this case is 11 meters. So, and I think what Ashley was saying is even the zoning bylaw has not incorporated that 45-degree angular plane from the property line. So that's all that it's saying. I think the second part of that question was related to the 80% and whether or not, if we were to apply it on this case, would it result in a better design along the streets? And you know, when we look at what Aphrodite and team have developed, there is a bit of a step back above it, but it's not. It does penetrate within the 45-degree angular plane at 80%. So unfortunately, it's not illustrated in our presentation, and it should be.
Right. So it's hard for us to answer that question because I can't really quantify what the impact of application of that would be. So I don't, unless you can assist us in understanding what that would be. And this time I'm asking the question to the proponent. What would be the impact on the design if we were to follow that 80%? How much would you, what would be the?
So I can provide, sorry, David, go ahead.
No, I was going to pass it over to you. I thought it'd be nice if we had the drawing on the screen to show people, but
yeah,
take it away.
I can share the drawing, but also, so the planned right-of-way dedication of the road, Main Street, is 26.2 meters. And so the with the proposed building height, there would be, specifically on the Main Street, and this isn't for the Margaret Street frontage, but there would be slight protrusions on level 8 and 9 and mechanical penthouse. And like David said, I unfortunately don't have a drawing to show that, but it would only be limited to the 8th and 9th story along Main Street.
Can we just pull up the massing? Actually, I think it would be helpful.
Yeah.
Most people are visual people, but
yep, I will do that.
Our building height right now is 29, right? So if you're saying 26, so basically from level 9 and up, we have to apply angular plane. That's what I understand. If you go to section, I don't know if you have this any of or maybe side elevation. I think side elevation, if you do have side elevation, yeah, but there is no dimension, I guess, here. Okay, there is the heights are not shown, but basically from average grade to the top of the building, the like below level mechanical level, we are 29 meter. So basically just one level, like 3 meter minus 29 is 26. So from 26, which is going to be somewhere here, then we're going to apply the angular plane, which we already have some setback here. So it might not be much if it's 26 meter, Ashley, right? You said 26 meter?
Correct. And then the angular plane is taken from 80% of that.
Oh, 80% of the 26, not, okay. I thought then final number is 26. Okay, no. So then it's going to be 8 and 9 probably. So 26.
Okay, the other question I have, it's sort of related. You have
20 meter.
This section or elevation, I can see balconies are showing up on those upper floors above the 6-story base level. But I notice in the perspectives that you don't have balconies on those upper floors. You sort of have them on some of your line diagrams, but
yeah, we would like
in
to
other
have
cases
them.
you don't.
No, we would
So
like to
I guess
have
I'm wondering
them.
which
we would like to
scheme
have
you're
them.
selling here. You know,
Yeah, we would like to have it.
Presenting.
We
want the balconies.
Yes.
yeah, and the floor plans do show them, David,
Yeah.
on the 7th, 8th, and 9th.
Can you go to your perspective
Yeah.
though?
Yeah, the perspective is doesn't read. It's hard. It's very hard to see. That's the one. Yeah.
Yeah.
It doesn't look to me like you have balconies on those upper levels in this perspective.
Yeah, we were debating to having Juliet balcony or no balcony. I think that's what it is. But like, we would like to have a balcony for sure. For the lower levels, we don't have any balcony. It's going to be all Juliet balcony, like a sliding doors. But the upper level, we will have balconies.
I don't think I have any other questions. I'm going to turn it over to the panelists for their comments. So the first is Jennifer Sison.
Thanks, David. So I think I'll divide my comments between the building and the streetscape, and I don't want to spend too much time on the building, as I won't go into as much detail as my colleagues. But I do find the proposed massing and height, they're larger than anything else currently in this area, and they will set a precedent for future redevelopment. While we've discussed it already, I do have concerns with the proposed building setback adjacent to those houses on Strathcona. Noting this is assumed to be an interim condition, I appreciate that you've looked at the net shadow impacts, but the gross shadow impacts are still fairly significant. 4 homes aren't going to get any sunlight until the afternoon from both the March and September shade studies. So I would encourage further consideration for those residences and the interim impacts, and did want to say thank you, David, for noting that you're already looking at this. In terms of the streetscape, I do appreciate the provision of retail space at the ground floor on Main Street and the 3 street trees you've shown here, along with some planting beds along Main Street. I find that Margaret Street's frontage could be improved on in terms of public realm. You may want to look at combining those parking loading entrances, assuming that the alleyway can be purchased to make additional room, and to improve that streetscape by reducing the number of driveways and pedestrian crossings that you'll have in that spot. Also, other than the trees and planting beds, I do find that Main and Margaret are fairly bare in terms of streetscape improvements. With the retail spaces along Main, I'd encourage you to provide some additional space there, some width, to allow those uses to spill out onto the street and contribute to that public realm further by giving them some additional space that may allow you to put in things like bike parking and seating that are kind of absent from this facade as well as along Margaret. I think that kind of sums up my comments, and I would like to overall thank all of you for your presentations and your time today, and I do look forward to seeing the final design. Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Ted.
Okay. First of all, I'd like to thank you for what was a very clear document for us to review. Particularly the angular planes and the shadow studies, I felt told the story very well. And I'd also like to compliment you on the character and the form of this development. It's quite refreshing from what we're seeing more typically. The design, I think, has a lot of character, and I think it intrinsically differentiates itself from a typical massing, which are more dependent on facade compositions and material changes. This is more of an expression of massing and form, and I think the sculpting for daylight is actually giving this building a lot of character, and I'd love to see more of this in mid-rise designs. I think the 45-degree at the corner, I suspect that's a property, a result of the property, but I think it's very successful in addressing the street and making a transition into the neighborhood. And I like the approach to the ground floor and the corner. It feels though, however, the public round landscape, there's opportunity to make that much better. And this building is achieving a lot of density in what is a residential, walkable, livable neighborhood. And so the ground plane, I think, needs to be of extremely high quality and depth, as to the previous comments. I think there's opportunities for more trees and green space in there. In terms of the shadows to the north, I do feel that the angular planes should be respected in this regard. It is a considerable impact when, we say it's only an hour more. That's in addition to a few hours that they currently are not in shade, and it is a resident. There are people living there, and it is a residence. So I think that should be respected. In terms of the upper level, the discussion that was taking place, I feel the renderings are more successful than the line drawings in terms of addressing a setback or a sense of setback to Main Street. And so if the balconies are to remain, I feel the facade should step back another meter or two to achieve that feeling of relief at the higher level, so that we don't have a slab extruded from grade. And finally, the west side. I think there's two reasons to introduce some considerable stepping on that side. One is the existing residents, but I think the second one is that if this block were to be developed with a zero setback, I think that would not be an ideal condition. I think having a break between those buildings, at least above a certain level, that permits light to pass through those buildings. There's a laneway, there's residents who are in their backyards, to have a break and not have a consistent wall of residential buildings to the south, I think is a positive aspect, and I think it would help the actual street facade to have a break in those between the current development and the future development. And those are my comments. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Dana.
Hi, I just want to start by commending Bousfields for a great planning submission, but also the architect for a beautiful building. Very interesting geometric architecture, both on a big scale, but within the small details. Some of the horizontal and vertical banding I thought were really well done in this proposal. I share many of the concerns and thoughts of my colleagues here. With respect to the shadowing, please do look at that as you move forward. With respect to the angular plane, I do think it works on the backside. However, I'm not so certain that achieving that on the Margaret Street frontage would improve the design of the building. I think it might actually take away from the design of the building. I caution you when you look at the detailed design, whether having it kind of taper off at the top would give it, I guess, if you will, a wedding cake design versus something that is, I know, a little less like step back on each frontage. If you do want to improve the street level, I think we should look at, amenity space, furniture, whether it's art or even canopies along the public realm to really improve that space, as well as to mitigate some of the wind shear that might come from a flat frontage along Margaret Street. I was looking at the outdoor public space, and it looks like you're providing a small strip in the background, kind of close to an air intake. So I would encourage you to explore the opportunities for rooftop green space or rooftop amenity if that's available as part of this, particularly as some of the lower units along Margaret Street didn't have access to a balcony. So considering that maybe not all units will have a balcony access, look and explore opportunities for better outdoor amenity space. And I also just had one thought regarding the retail parking space. I think you're only providing one. I think that's like a little bit odd. Maybe consider either providing none or just removing it, because I think when people are coming to retail spaces and there's only one parking space in a garage, it might be kind of funny whether or not it's available, and some of the thoughts around that functioning appropriately or as you want. And that's everything for me.
Thank you.
Jennifer Mallett.
Thanks, David, and thank you for your presentation. First of all, I want to say congratulations. This is a beautiful building. There's a lot of really great moves that you've made that are cohesive and talked. The language of the skin talks to each other as you move up the building, and I think there are some great things that are. The story is told in the renderings, and we need to make sure that it happens in reality. And the conversation up at the balconies is one of them. So there's the design intent in the renderings, I find, is very strong. I think the success of the building will happen with the detailing. David was talking about the slab extensions, protrusions in the lower levels, and is that a giant thermal bridge, or are they insulated? And then the cladding on that has to be really, beautifully done. And then how is that balcony detail in the renderings? There's a slight opacity where there might be an intention of a balcony, but if that's capped with a hard railing, and posts, the language clarity is going to get lost. So I was interested to hear you say that on the lower levels you were thinking of just putting Juliet balconies, and I thought, okay, great, because then you won't have this like, you know, bar and post for the railings that will diminish that clarity of language. And then conversely, on the upper floors, where there's no slab protrusion and it's a tight skin, that's a really nice foil to the protrusions that are on the lower level. But if the terraces are up there, then you're going to lose that dichotomy of those things talking to each other. So I think a lot will happen as the building gets resolved more, as it always does. But again, congratulations, beautiful building. I do agree with Dana's earlier point that the bit of green space at the back isn't really a great outdoor amenity space. I think the outdoor amenity is really on the generous sidewalk at the corner. And whether that's over your property line or not, I think that's where people will hang. So maybe putting some city planting in that corner will help that make that be a more livable space. Those are all my comments for now.
Eldon?
Thank you.
Thank you again for the presentation. Being to second to last, I think most of the comments that I would have shared have been shared by most of my colleagues around the table. I do want to echo 2 points. One is I do think that that it is a wonderful expression of built form that you propose on that site, and I would encourage you to continue in that direction and in that vein. And the second point being really investigate, and it's mentioned a number of times, that Western relationship, whether it's a step back at the second or third floor to provide some relief as an interim measure until that development redevelops, or something a little more to that. I think that is the one big weakness in the proposal that needs immediate attention. Other than that, thank you for sharing that. A really great proposal. And I'll turn it back to you, David.
Thank you. I'm kind of in Eldon's shoes as well. I think mostly everything's been said. I agree. It's a very strong architectural scheme. And I hope that you're able to maintain the elegance that it has as you move forward and refine some of those sustainability and other issues that have been identified. It will be a great building if you are able to do that. And I think the other issues that we've talked to are already well commented on. Whether or not this 80% application on the Main Street would improve things, it's a little hard to say. I do agree with Ted's earlier observation that the perspective with the balconies not protruding out so far and sort of establishing the 6-story datum as something that then there's some kind of penthouse treatment that steps back. I kind of prefer it to the ones where you had the line diagrams with the balconies as well. I think it's a stronger solution. And I also agree with the the idea that maybe the top levels, the angular or some kind of strategy for mitigating the issues you have on the west with the present condition in terms of residential is the way to go. But that I also agree, and I can't remember who mentioned it now, that at Margaret, I kind of like that it's not stepping back, that there's a bit of the character of the building where it all resolves at that chamfered corner. I think it's nice to not erode the strength of the building at that location, which is of course also the farthest from the residential areas. So all in all, I think it's a very promising project and look forward to where you take it. I don't know if you have any other, I was going to say that I think you asked for parking reduction, which I don't have an issue with. And I was a little confused about the retail and restaurant business because I thought you were asking for relief to do that, which I was going to support. But then I thought in the planning description, it was said somehow that it was okay and it wasn't an issue. So if it is an issue, I'm okay with it. You can go for it. And if it isn't an issue, you don't have to ask my comment. So I was a little confused about that. But anyway, it's all good as far as I could say. So I don't have any other notes. And I don't know if you have any, we had lots of clarification back and forth on this one. So I don't know if you have any other clarification you can ask us. It's very helpful for David and Ashley in your planning interpretations.
I can respond to your question about the uses. So the secondary plan permits it. And like I said, in the secondary plan, there's a site-specific exception that permits live work units, offices, financial institutions. And then it also says, in addition to those, local commercial uses are permitted on the ground floor. But what translated to the site-specific zoning only allows for those first round of uses and doesn't allow for the local commercial uses, which we think.
I'm in that case, I would support any of these, street-related activities that interact with the public, any kind of amenity and retail at that level. I think it only improve the quality of Main Street, particularly once it becomes two-way. And I think that the other comments about making it a little more generous on that area at the grade to encourage the success of those uses in that public realm is also, well worth supporting. Otherwise, if there are no other questions, I think we're done for today. There were only two. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thanks for all your comments. We definitely appreciate it, and we think the work that Aphrodite and the team did is amazing, and we really appreciate the fact that you appreciate the architecture. So thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks,
everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone, for attending. That will conclude our DRP today.
Thanks, Edward.